The air at Fort Hartsfield was a razor-sharp blend of pine, sweat, and ozone. It was a place where the weak were broken and the strong were forged, a training facility carved out of the unforgiving wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. Here, the only currency that mattered was competence, and the only hierarchy that counted was the one earned in the crucible of combat. Private First Class Jackson Riley thought he understood this. At 22, with a chest full of bravado and the chiseled physique of a born athlete, he was the picture of a perfect recruit. He was faster than anyone in his platoon, a dead shot with a rifle, and he possessed an innate, arrogant confidence that bordered on cockiness. He saw himself as the future of the military, a new breed of soldier, unburdened by the ancient rituals and tired traditions of the past. To him, the old guard was just that old. His scorn was particularly directed at the combat instructors. They were a motley crew, veterans of countless tours, their bodies a living testament to a hard-won history. They were often silent, their eyes holding a distant, weary knowledge that Jackson mistook for dullness. He saw them as relics, their methods outdated, their scars nothing more than badges of a bygone era. And then there was Major Alina Ghost Vostolev. At first glance, she was an enigma. She was the company commander, a woman of small stature, with a quiet, almost serene demeanor. She didn't bark orders or engage in the theatrics that defined the other instructors. She spoke with a calm, precise authority that was often ignored or underestimated by the new recruits. Her movements were fluid and economical, and she moved through the training grounds with the silent grace of a predator. But the most striking thing about her was her scars. A web of jagged, discolored tissue ran from the corner of her right eye, down her jaw, and disappeared beneath the high collar of her uniform. A few other, smaller scars were visible on her hands and neck, a brutal constellation of past trauma. Jackson saw them as a weakness, a testament to her failure, a mark of a soldier who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He couldn't reconcile the idea of a veteran, a decorated major no less, with the kind of disfigurement he imagined could only come from a lack of skill. The rest of the platoon, veterans of the basic training and with a few weeks under their belts, had learned to respect Major Vasilev's quiet authority. They saw the way the older, more hardened sergeants deferred to her, the way she could dissect a tactical problem with a few sharp, incisive words, the way she could put a rifle round through a target SI at 500 meters without a hint of a tremor. They knew better than to question her. But Jackson, in his arrogant bubble of self-importance, was a different story. The incident that would forever alter his perspective happened during a close-quarters combat drill. The exercise was a simulation of a building clearing, and Major Vosilev was running the scenario. She was a ghost in the urban maze, a blur of motion and silence that Jackson found infuriating. He was a powerhouse, a whirlwind of muscle and aggression. But she kept outmaneuvering him, appearing from impossible angles, her hand a cool, firm presence on his neck. "You're dead, recruit," she would whisper, her voice barely audible. His frustration finally boiled over. After the 5th time she had killed him, he ripped the helmet from his head and threw it to the ground. "This is ridiculous," he fumed. "You're not even a real threat. You're a damn ghost. You don't fight fair." Major Vosilov, her face impassive, simply looked at him. "The enemy does not fight fair, Private. They will use every advantage they have. They will use the darkness, the terrain, the element of surprise. and if you are not prepared for that, you will not survive." "Survive?" Jackson scoffed, a cruel smirk on his lips. He gestured dismissively toward her scars. "Looks like you didn't do a very good job of surviving yourself, Major." "What, did a cat scratch you?" The insult, delivered with a callous disregard, hung in the air like a venomous cloud. The rest of the recruits froze, their faces a mixture of shock and horror. Sergeant Miller, a grizzled veteran with a 1,000-yard stare, took a step forward, his jaw clenched, ready to throttle the arrogant recruit. But Major Vosilev held up a hand, a quiet gesture that stopped him cold. She looked at Jackson, her eyes, usually so calm, now holding a faint, distant storm. "Is that what you believe, Private?" she asked, her voice dangerously soft. "That these are just scars?" "I don't believe anything, Major," he said, emboldened by her lack of an aggressive response. "I'm just saying, a real soldier doesn't get messed up like that. A real soldier is ... perfect. A real soldier is me." The words were still hanging on his lips when a sound, a deep, resonant rumble, shook the very ground beneath their feet. A convoy of black SUVs, escorted by armored Humvees, rolled to a stop at the edge of the training area. The doors opened, and a whirlwind of crisp uniforms, polished boots, and a palpable air of authority spilled out. Leading the charge was a man whose presence commanded immediate attention. He was a towering figure, his dress uniform pristine, his shoulders heavy with the 4 stars of a general. General Marcus Dornay, living legend, a man whose name was synonymous with modern warfare, had arrived. He was a man Jackson had only ever seen on a poster, a figure of myth and awe. The entire training ground, once a chaotic symphony of shouting and exertion, fell into a complete, unnerving silence. Every man, every instructor, every recruit including Jackson's, napped to attention. Their backs ramrod straight, their faces a mask of discipline. General Thorne strode forward, his gaze sweeping over the silent ranks. He was not a man to waste words. He scanned the faces of the instructors, his eyes finally settling on Major Vosilev. His gaze, usually so fierce, softened imperceptibly as he took in her battle-worn face. He didn't say Major. He didn't say Commander Vosilev. He didn't use any of the formal titles that Jackson expected. Instead, he said, his voice a low gravelly rumble that seemed to fill the entire air, "Ghost. It's been too long." The single word, uttered with a deep, abiding respect, hit Jackson with the force of a physical blow. The recruits around him, who had heard the name whispered in hushed tones, stiffened. The name Ghost was a legend, a myth whispered around campfires and in the dark corners of barracks. It was the name of a Special Forces operative who had single-handedly held a forward operating base against a massive insurgent attack in a conflict zone no one spoke of, a mission so dangerous and so classified that the details were only known to a handful of people at the very top. The operative had held the line for 3 days, wounded, out of ammunition, and alone, until a rescue team could be dispatched. The scars, the rumors said, were a result of the improvised explosives she had used to clear a path for the rescue team, a risk she had taken to save lives. And now, General Thorne, a man who had commanded armies, was standing before this woman, this Major Vosilev, and calling her by that name. The silence that followed was heavy with a new kind of revelation. Jackson, his face pale, his arrogant smirk gone, felt a cold, visceral terror wash over him. The woman he had mocked, the woman he had dismissed as a failure, was a legend. A hero whose name would be etched in the annals of military history. Her scars were not a mark of her failure, but a testament to her courage. A living record of a sacrifice he couldn't even begin to comprehend. General Thorne stepped closer to Major Vasilev, his voice dropping to a more intimate, conversational tone. "I heard you took a nasty fall during a training exercise, Ghost. Still keeping these young men on their toes, I see." He gestured to the recruits with a wry smile. Major Vasilev, her face still impassive, simply returned his gaze. "Just teaching them that perfection is an illusion, sir. The only thing that matters is survival." The general's eyes flickered to Jackson, his expression turning cold, his gaze a blade of ice. He didn't say anything to the young recruit. He didn't have to. The lesson had already been delivered. The general's eyes held a silent, damning message. Respect your elders, respect your leaders. And most of all, respect the scars they carry, because they are a map of a world you have yet to see. After a brief, private conversation, General Thorne departed, his convoy disappearing as quickly as it had arrived. The training ground was once again a place of silent, controlled chaos, but the air was different. The recruits looked at Major Vasilev with a new light in their eyes, a look of profound respect and awe. They knew who she was now. She was a legend. Later that day, Jackson found himself alone in a small, windowless office, facing Major Vasilev. His arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of shame. He was no longer a perfect recruit. He was just a kid who had mocked a hero. "Private Riley," she said, her voice still quiet, but now imbued with a weight he had never heard before. "You made a mistake today, not just in your words, but in your attitude. You see perfection as an absence of flaws. But in our world, perfection is an illusion. The only thing that matters is the will to survive, the courage to fight, and the humility to learn." He couldn't meet her gaze. "I'm sorry, Major," he mumbled, the words feeling thin and inadequate. "I didn't know." "No," she said simply. "You didn't, but you do now." She stood up, her small frame radiating a quiet power that he now understood. She wasn't just a combat instructor. She was a ghost, a myth, a living legend. And her scars, once a symbol of what he perceived as a failure, were now, in his eyes, the most beautiful, terrifying things he had ever seen. They were a testament to her survival, a map of a past that had made her who she was. From that day forward, Jackson was a changed man. The cockiness was gone, replaced by a quiet, focused determination. He still trained harder than anyone, but now, he listened. He learned. He watched Major Vasilev with a fierce, burning admiration, seeing not her scars, but the strength and courage they represented. He learned that a soldier's valor is not measured by the absence of marks on their body, but by the fire in their soul. He learned that respect, like a bullet, must be earned, and that some of the greatest heroes, the truest legends, walk among us in silence. Their most profound stories etched, not in medals, but in the scars they carry.